Welcome to Missouri 2021 Presents. I'm Beth Pike, coming to you from the Center for Missouri Studies in Columbia. Today's program will have you humming a tune by the end of the hour, guaranteed. Missouri is a place where East meets West, and we're often a musical crossroads of all kinds of styles. And with us to celebrate music for the Bicentennial, we are joined by panelist Stefan Freund, Professor of Composition and Artistic Director of the Mizzou New Music Initiative, Emmeline Johnson and Dan Ketter, directors of the American Wild Ensemble, to talk about Missouri music at 200. Also joining us is Paul Reuter and Patrick Murphy, co-directors of the Sheldons' Show Me the Music, a celebration of the Missouri Bicentennial. Now, the concert was recorded by Nine Network in St. Louis just a few weeks ago, and it will be televised on Missouri PBS stations in August or early fall. And finally, we will hear from Michael Sweeney, Missouri's Bicentennial coordinator, who has been planning the musical lineup for Together for 21 Fest on the MU campus the weekend of August 6th through 8th in Columbia. First, we will hear from our panelists, and at the end of the show, we'll get to your questions. You can type a comment or a question anytime during the program where you see the button for Q&A at the bottom of your screen. Now, our first segment is Missouri Music at 200, a program performed by the American Wild Ensemble, which includes 6 new works of contemporary classical music, chamber music written by Missouri-connected composers in a series of live and virtual performances this year. And to tell us more, we welcome co-directors Emmeline Johnson and Dan Ketter and composer Stefan Freund in our program. Welcome. Emmeline, I think you're going to get us started.
Great. Thank you so much for the welcome, Beth. We're just going to get our screen shared here. Great. So my name is Emmeline Johnson.
And I'm Dan Ketter.
And we are joining you from Springfield, Missouri, where we both teach at Missouri State University. We're also excited to welcome Stefan Freund today, and we're going to pass the word over to him in just a little bit. We are working on a project for this summer, for this August, called Missouri Music at 200, with our ensemble, the American Wild Ensemble. This is really through our initiative, Music in the American Wild. And we've created this program to celebrate living Missouri music and to reflect on the upcoming bicentennial. So today we want to give you a little bit of background about our ensemble, where we're coming from, and then talk a little bit more specifically about the project.
So American Wild Ensemble, we've been together since 2016, and our mission is to celebrate the people, places, and stories that shape American history and culture through the commission and performance of new music, specifically classical chamber music. We started in 2016 for the National Park Service Centennial, where we toured 7 national parks with 11 newly commissioned pieces that were inspired by the National Park Service and its mission. We are really excited to play these pieces in the parks that inspired them. Since then, we presented several different kinds of programs inspired by other National Park Service units, by women's suffrage, by American aviators, and also Hawaiian endemic wildlife. So here's a photo from one of our performances at our first tour, where we're playing some of our pieces inspired by caves down in Mammoth Cave in Kentucky at Mammoth Cave National Park. Here's another, just to give you an idea of what our outdoor performances have looked like in the past. This is at Olympic National Park. We're playing at Hurricane Ridge, a piece that's inspired by mountains. When we were working with the National Park Service and in the projects that we've done since then, it's really important to our ensemble that we're collaborating with our partner organizations to support their missions. And we're really trying to make that a part of our tour for this fall to reflect on the Missouri Bicentennial. We're going to be working with several different partner organizations and trying to support their missions through our performances. And this is another picture of a performance from that same tour where we're engaging with local audiences at a National Park Service site. To give you an idea of the kind of music that we play, this is a piece by Takuma Ito that we played for a tour that we did in Hawaii in February of 2020. This piece was inspired by Hawaiian endemic wildlife, specifically endangered Hawaiian birds. And we wanted to give you an idea of the kind of music that we play. This recording was live from Lion Arboretum in Honolulu, and it gives you an idea of the kind of music that we play and
the kind of spaces in which we play.
So we were really excited to share that clip because it gives you an idea of the kind of music that we play. Also, that performance was live from an arboretum. We were in this performance trying to support the mission of the Arboretum of conservation of endemic Hawaiian flora and fauna. And we were also working with a composer that lived and worked in Hawaii, Takumi Ito. And we're trying to bring that same kind of spirit to our reflection on the Missouri Bicentennial with that project this year.
So moving into this project, our Missouri Music at 200, we have taken, as Dan mentioned, the same kind of collaborative approach, this cohesive approach to programming around Missouri. So this year we have commissioned several new pieces of classical chamber music and poetry to reflect on Missouri's bicentennial year. When we first started thinking about this program, we were thinking we're celebrating, the bicentennial. And then we really thought, no, we're reflecting and we're engaging with different audiences, encouraging people to see different spaces in new ways and thinking about it a little bit more broadly. So the composers that we've worked with, 6 different composers, have chosen topics that really reflect their experience in Missouri or their engagement with Missouri. Some of them have chosen to look at Missouri musical traditions like jazz, blues, folk music. Others have chosen to really explore specific people, historic events, topics, places. There's a real mix. And our composers that we've assembled, the roster we've assembled, we're really excited to work with this program and how it's all coming together. In August, leading up to and around Statehood Day, we are going to be doing a tour of outdoor performances at 5 community locations in Springfield, Joplin, Kansas City, Gray Summit, just outside of St. Louis, and Columbia. We'll also be having a virtual performance with the Missouri History Museum in St. Louis to wrap up the tour on August 12th. So just to kind of echo Dan's comments, this is really a collaborative program. It's crafted to engage audiences statewide from a lot of different entry points. We have the music, we have historians involved, we have poets involved, and we have all these different partner venues and organizations around the state whose work we're trying to support and amplify. So really trying to make this a cohesive, collaborative project. So we want to tell you just a little bit about the actual composers who are involved and the music that they're writing. As we know, Missouri has a very rich musical heritage, and we thought that it was an important element of that to really celebrate living classical composers in the state. There are many kinds of living composers in the state, but this also fits in with kind of our mission with contemporary chamber music. So we chose these composers who are all affiliated with different organizations and institutions around the state for their different kinds of styles, their different interests in Missouri history, and their close ties to this region. So we're going to introduce you to them. First up, we have Stefan Freund. Again, we're going to pass the mic over to him shortly, who is a professor of composition at Mizzou, and his piece is going to take inspiration from old-time Missouri fiddle music. So we're excited to hear a little bit more about that in just a moment. We also have Marcus Lewis, who's a jazz composer, trombonist, and arranger based in Kansas City, works at UMKC. And his piece is really engaging with Missouri jazz history, the different traditions, and that rich jazz heritage in the state. And this will be our first time as a kind of more classically focused ensemble working in more of the jazz tradition. So we're really excited about that collaboration. We also have Mike Murray, who's a professor of composition here at Missouri State University, where Dan and I teach. And his music is engaging with a folk music collection based here at Missouri State, the Max Hunter Collection, and specifically with songs that were written to kind of commemorate the 1928 West Plains Dance Hall explosion. So kind of a specific niche, but looking at a really interesting collection of music. We also have Christopher Stark, who is a composer at WashU in St. Louis. And Chris's music is really focused, his piece is going to take inspiration from Missouri rock and blues history, kind of the idea of all these musicians, blues musicians traveling around the state to different venues, and also his personal connection to growing up listening to this music. We have Ingrid Stolzel, who's a professor at University of Kansas, but was a longtime resident of Kansas City, Missouri. Ingrid is inspired in her music by the German immigrant experience in 19th century Missouri. As a German immigrant herself, she found a lot of interest in this area of research, thinking about this 19th century kind of promotion as the Missouri Rhineland that they were trying to attract German immigrants to. And finally, we have Barbara Harbach, who's an emerita professor at UMSL. And Barbara, whose music has engaged with this region, with the prairies and these beautiful outdoor locations for a long time, is really turning her focus to telling the story of the life of Mohango, who was a 19th century Osage woman in this region. Alongside our composers, we are also commissioning poets Karen Crago, the current Poet Laureate of Missouri, and Glenn North, the current Poet Laureate of the historic 18th and Vine Jazz District in Kansas City, to create poetic contributions to the program. And we're also using poetry from Alice Azure, an Indigenous poet who's located just outside of St. Louis. All of this poetry kind of plays into the program in different ways. For example, Glenn's work is actually going to collaborate with our jazz work by Marcus Lewis and be incorporated into the music. The others may stand alone in the program. But we are working with them to create even, again, this more collaborative project, different kinds of reflections, moving just beyond the music of the performance. We're also working with an artist from the Kansas City Art Institute, Il-Sung Na, to create some artwork for the program, which is coming soon. And we have a variety of partner organizations with whom we are working very closely, not just as venue hosts, but as real partners in this project. So the venues listed here, the organizations listed here, will be the places we're performing, and also, again, who we're working very closely with in this project. The Shaw Nature Reserve, the Missouri History Museum, Watkins Cultural Center, Pro Musica Series in Joplin, and the State Historical Society of Missouri, the Research Center in Columbia, are all going to act as both venues and really active partners in this concert tour. With each venue and organization, we are planning to choose specific repertoire from our commissioned list, match that with poetry, match that with history, and with representative speakers from each organization who can speak to their work. For example, at the Shaw Nature Reserve, we'll be working with their director to talk about their native plant conservation. At the Watkins Cultural Center, we'll be hearing about the important work that they're doing there in Kansas City and around the state. So we're really looking forward to this kind of mix of music, of history, of poetry, and of just learning about all the great cultural work that's happening around the state as well. So if you'd like more information, you can visit our website. We have our tour dates and locations listed on our Missouri Projects page. And now we're really excited to turn it over to Stefan to hear about the work he's been working on for the Bicentennial.
Hello, everyone. It's so exciting to be a part of this amazing project. One of the things that's exciting about a composer, of course, having your music played, one of the things that's so cool about this is, as Emlyn mentioned, there are all these performances in all of these different cities. So it's a great opportunity to have people in other cities outside of Columbia hear my music and hear music by these other exciting composers in Missouri. It's really a wealth of talent that we have right now in our composition ranks. And again, kind of picking up from this great history of Missouri music that we've had over the past couple hundred years. My piece, as Emlyn mentioned, is focused on the Missouri fiddle tradition. And it's really inspired by two books by somebody that you all might know, Howard White Marshall. One is Play Me Something Quick and Devilish. Oops, that didn't work very well, did it? And the other is Fiddler's Dream. There we go, kind of see those. And Howard is a professor emeritus of art history and archaeology here at the University of Missouri. He lives in a town just a little south of here. He also participated in the Sheldon's concert that Paul and Patrick are going to talk about in a little while. Collaborated with him a little bit with some civic orchestra productions that I've done in the past. And he's just a real kind of mid-Missouri legend. As I mentioned, he is a fiddle player, and he comes from a long tradition of fiddle players, as he writes about. And the real focus of my piece is, so far, and I haven't finished it yet, but I'm working on it now, is a tune called Marmaduke's Hornpipe. And Marmaduke's Hornpipe, as Howard writes in his book, is really considered the most popular fiddle tune in Missouri, at least one of them. I should always be careful when I say that. I should say one of the most popular, because of course everyone has their own idea. One of the things that I learned while working on this project is that the fiddle is actually the state instrument of Missouri. I did not know that. So that's kind of a cool thing, and I'm carrying a lot of weight here to represent the state instrument of Missouri. So I wanted to play a little clip of Marmaduke's Hornpipe for you, performed by Jake Hockmeyer in 1965. And I want to talk a little bit about what's so interesting to me about this performance. So Of course, it's a fun tune. It has a lot of elements of fiddling that you might be familiar with. But what's really spectacular about this realization of this piece is a technique that they call double sticking, where they're playing a lot of similar notes on two different strings, so the same note twice on two different strings, and it just creates a really wild, ringy sound to it. So this recording will sound quite rough to you, I'm sure, and when we realize the piece, it'll be a lot smoother, I think, because we're talking about fiddle players versus classical musicians. But in the piece, I actually have a literal transcription, or at least as close as I could come to it, to the original tune. So this is actually realized in the piece, and that breaks it down. It does different things with it. I think that's probably enough to say about it, so I'll play a little bit of this. So this is Marmaduke's Hornpipe. I think I'm ready. As you can hear, that one of the things I think is so cool about the sound is it really sounds like a brass instrument or something because of the two notes coming through. Has this really loud thing. And what's interesting about the ensemble I'm writing for is it's not just strings. So of course in that performance you can hear string, you can hear bass, but the American Wild Ensemble, in addition to the violin, has the viola, has a cello, then has wind instruments, has a flute, has a clarinet, has a horn, and then also has percussion. So I'm trying to find parts of that tune that really fit each one of those instruments well and write idiomatic figures for them. So for example, the horn plays that effect a lot of the time, and that's repeated several times in what I have. So just kind of going through that, taking out parts that really excite me, and then developing them further. So it's been a lot of fun working on the piece, and I look forward to completing it and hearing it in August. It'll be great.
So much of what you all are doing too is also reintroducing us to the sounds of Missouri from the past. And I think that is so exciting for those of us who listen to all different styles, but to be able to kind of look back and see what has been part of our history and our culture is really cool. And you're right, the fiddle being our state instrument. So wonderful. Well, where does classical blues, R&B, bluegrass, jazz, rock, and ragtime come together? Well, that would be at the Sheldon. Our next segment will feature the co-directors of Show Me the Music, a celebration of the Missouri Bicentennial, a special concert recently filmed in the historic Sheldon Concert Hall in St. Louis. It will be broadcast on Missouri PBS stations later this summer. And before we visit with Paul and Patrick, we're first going to show you a short clip to give you a sneak peek of the concert.
Jolene, 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 I'm begging of you, please don't take my hand. Jolene, 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 please don't take him even though you can.
All right. So that was Howard Marshall and Friends, Rhonda Vincent and the Rage, Royce Martin playing Maple Leaf Rag, Anita Jackson singing blues and R&B, Peter Martin Trio with guest trumpeter Keon Harold and saxophonist Bobby Watson, and finally the faculty quartet Zoo M Ensemble from the University of Missouri with a world premiere performance of Waterways, composed by Stefan Freund, who you just met in our last segment. The concert's co-director had much to juggle and organize the many sets and artists featured in this special concert for the Bicentennial. And to tell us more about it are Paul Reuter and Patrick Murphy. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Beth. Great for us both to be here. And I should mention the hard part was actually picking which artists we could fit into this concert. We had a 4-hour videotaping, and then the job quickly became whittling that down to a 1-hour PBS special. Patrick and I took a crack at that this past week or so. And Patrick, do you want to say something about the process of the PBS special?
Well, Paul and I have been doing this for a while. In the middle of St. Louis's entertainment district, the Sheldon is right across the alley from the studios of KETC. And we actually have cables running underneath. So, it's easy to use the Sheldon, which is this incredible hall, which is a very special place in the hearts of St. Louisans as a studio. So we've done a number of productions over the years. And actually, I think, my God, was it 2 years ago, Paul, that we went out and had coffee and suggested that, we do something about me. And our vision is very much the same as yours, trying to tell the story of Missouri in an appropriate way on its 200th anniversary in a way that everybody can relate to. Because I think we all agree that nobody really has a grip on like what Missouri is all about. Is it a northern state, a southern state? Is it rural? Is it urban? Whatever. Living in St. Louis, you kind of sometimes get the feeling that Missouri is out there somewhere, but you're not quite sure if you're even really a part of it. And we agreed that music is a great way to tell the story. Being where it is geographically, so many people pass through Missouri, and so many musical traditions became a part of the tradition of the entire state. And there's so much great talent. And we started talking about this about 2 years ago, and then the pandemic hit. As I'm sure a lot of you all were kind of surprised, like, what do we do now? And it's all worked out. It's all worked out, very well. So, actually, most of the hard work was done by Paul. Getting sponsors, raising the money, getting the artists, and it was just a wonderful taping session. We had a small audience, but we actually, rather than doing it like a show, we did it more like the taping of a television special, where we just sort of shut it down and readjust the cameras, and the audience, I think, had a good time seeing sort of the ugly underbelly of how TV is made. And we're in the process now of putting it all together as a show. It's going to be an hour-long show. It's going to represent Beth, as you said, the major genres of bluegrass and rock and country and rhythm and blues and jazz from both Kansas City and St. Louis. And it's turning out to be a nice little show. So Channel 9 is very well connected with the stations in Kansas City, Sedalia, the Ozark station, so PBS stations cover like more than 90% of everybody who lives in the state of Missouri, maybe more. And we're going to air in St. Louis on August 4th. The other stations will decide, when a good time for them to air is, but it'll be August, September, maybe, even into the fall. So we have an opportunity to reach a really big audience with this music in kind of an entertaining way. Everybody likes music. It's one thing we all agree on in Missouri, that we like the music. And I think over the course of an hour, it's going to just present a lot of, interesting genres of music performed by the state's top performers. We also, Paul did made an effort to get musicians from all over the state. The last thing we wanted to do was have it, even though we recorded it in St. Louis, to be a St. Louis concert that we're presenting to the state. It's very much a collaborative effort among musicians and stations all around. Then there's an educational component too that Paul has put together for the schools. And Paul, you better qualified than I am to talk about that.
Right, could mention that via the Sheldon website, we have definitions of all the genres, and then short to medium long histories of those genres in the state of Missouri, and then biographies of some of the key musicians. And when you start going through the genres that Missouri musicians have contributed to significantly, and like there's really a long list of great people. Some of those names we all know, like Scott Joplin comes to mind, and Miles Davis, and Chuck Berry, people like that. But there's many other significant people who we don't keep track of and don't celebrate. And so this is a chance for Missouri students of all ages. And so we're aiming this obviously to the schools, to be available to schools for their resources, and to celebrate the diversity of our state through music. All the different peoples, the immigrant groups and freed slaves, and everybody who came to Missouri or went through Missouri, brought their music with them. And as Stefan said, the violin or the fiddle was probably one of the first, because it's very portable and was brought here by the French. And then very quickly you get into all of the traditions that kind of connect with that: country music, bluegrass, etc. And you have the whole ragtime, blues, jazz, R&B, rock and roll, hip hop, and then ongoing throughout the history, you have classical music brought here by, at first, European musicians or their descendants. And so lots of great music has been created by Missouri musicians, people either born here or who have lived and worked here for significant parts of their musical lives. We have a great many people to celebrate, and through the educational materials, people can follow up on some of these genres. And the 1 hour concert kind of gives you a taste of some of the great people that we have performing in the state of Missouri right now.
It is not a bad idea nowadays to remind people of what we have in common, what we share, what we agree on, what we can enjoy together. I'd also like to say that Stefan's piece is a gem in this, because we're not just looking back, we're also looking forward to. And we should be reminded that we're creating new music for the state of Missouri today as well, through the talents of composers like Stefan. And by the way, Stefan, I really have to say, we spent a lot of time editing, not editing the music, but editing, the piece, the camera works and stuff. So I've had the opportunity to hear your piece many, many times, and I really enjoy it. It's really good. I really like it. The musicians are terrific. And it's just, it's something different and something that fits in beautifully with the entire concert. So I want to thank the Singfields for commissioning that as well. But it's good to be reminded, to know, for people who don't know, that there's this wealth of talent and energy, and we're moving forward musically in the state as well. So it's not just to look back.
Well, I totally agree with you, and the Bicentennial being, our theme has been past, present, and future. And if we can't look at our future, if we can't document what we're doing today and look to the future, as Michael has said many times, what are we doing here? So I just think it's wonderful to have all of these genres and looking ahead, be part of it. And to think all this is being documented. So from 100 years from now, when they're planning, the 300th anniversary of statehood, all of this, I think, is somehow going to be brought up again. So we are creating this first draft of history once again here. So, and I have to think, when you think about music, one of my favorite little museums I visited, particularly was after I my kids and I read the Little House series books, and we went to Mansfield, of course, and checked out Laura Ingalls Wilder home. And of course, I was excited. Oh, I'm going to see her manuscript, see where the pen, the desk where she wrote it. But probably what had the most emotional impact on me was Pa's fiddle. And that is the most relished. That's what people come from all over the world. They come to see it. But what gets them, what they finally break down and they'll cry. That's what they'll have somebody coming in from, the Czech Republic who's read the series, or from Africa, wherever. And they'll look at that fiddle and literally it'll just be, the emotion will come out, because all of a sudden her book, we all can remember, how the sorrowful and difficult times on the prairie, but the happiness that they share so often was hearing Pa's play his fiddle and those tunes. And that is, of course, something that is, a thread throughout that whole series. So anyway, I just think everything that's being created, I've just gotten the goosebumps for it, and just know that people who are experiencing all these concerts this year is really very something special. And I think we'll all look back and reflect on that. So,
well, and anything like this is, so highly collaborative. And I'd also like to thank Bicentennial Commission and you all at the State Historical Society for your support and helping get the word out there, and your good advice. And at the very beginning, when we're going from place to place, asking people if they think this is a good idea or not, your encouragement from the very beginning in this, pushed us down the road along the way, and is very much appreciated at this point too.
Well, if anything, Michael and I can agree, this has all been such a statewide team effort to pull off the Bicentennial, and just so impressed by the talent and enthusiasm. So thank you for saying that. And we totally echo that. It has been so collaborative, and that's what's made it so wonderful. Music has been a strong theme throughout the commemoration of Missouri statehood this year, and you're going to hear music at many festivals happening across the state, including the major events Missouri 2021 is sponsoring in August, close to Statehood Day. Michael Sweeney is now here to talk about a free in-person live concert and different performances that will be happening at Together for 21 Fest in Columbia on the MU campus August 6th or August 7th, 8th, and 9th. And we do hope to live stream for those who can't be here. Michael, we have heard a lot of established musicians earlier in the program today, but a Friday night concert on August 7th brings us the next generation of talented musical groups, including some musicians who've been around here for a while.
Right. The weekend, I think, is going to be, certainly we're going to have our Friday evening music, but really music kind of runs throughout the entirety of the festival. And you've already sort of talked today about the central role that music has played in the state's history, life, and culture. Very quickly, I want to say thank you to Paul and Patrick and Emlyn and Dan and Stefan for contributing to all of this as well. Paul and Patrick, I met years ago. It's great to see this project having come to fruition. And Emlyn and Dan, we've been in conversation for quite a while. And so I'm grateful to all of you. As Beth already mentioned, Together for 21 Fest in Columbia is one of 4 major Statehood Day events that the Bicentennial is overseeing. This particular one is being organized by the State Historical Society of Missouri and the University of Missouri. It will occur over Friday, August 6th through Sunday, August 8th. In Columbia. As Beth mentioned, it is the entire weekend is free, and all of the various component pieces are free, and we hope to see lots of participation. As Beth already mentioned, kind of the big piece of this is an evening of Missouri music on Friday, August 6th, 7 o'clock in Jesse Auditorium there on the MU campus quad. One of our goals with this was to find folks who were using these long-standing musical traditions in Missouri and giving them new creative energy and life across different kinds of genres. So we're bringing Little Dylan Blues Band out of St. Louis. Dylan Triplett grew up in St. Louis and surrounded by this wonderful tradition, and is able to talk about and demonstrate kind of the ways that tradition has impacted the way he looks at music now, and the kind of performing that he does. The K Brothers and the Bernie Sisters will also be there, kind of representing the Ozark music tradition. They talk about their music as being Ozark stompgrass. And if you're not familiar with them, they bring again sort of this long musical tradition of old time music out of the Ozarks and give it this sort of additional life and creativity. The last group will be the Kansas State Latin Jazz Orchestra, headed by Pablo Sanchez, who is an immigrant from Chile. And, you know, he will often talk about how this place, Missouri, has reshaped the way he approaches music. And so this is this great combination of sort of Latin influences with our jazz traditions and the wonderful and amazing things that he and the orchestra doing with this. As I mentioned, the concert is free. We will be opening up registration for not just this event, but all events in July because there may be limited. It is free, so there may be limited seats available. But really, this is just one piece of the week. And I want to mention a few other musical related things that are happening over the weekend. Missouri Folk Arts Program, which is does this wonderful job of preserving and sharing our folk traditions across Missouri, helping to keep those things alive through its apprentice program and various other activities, is going to be bringing two programs of Missouri fiddle music, one on Friday, August 6th, the other on Saturday, August 7th. The one on Saturday will be, I believe, at 1 o'clock. We're still working on the time for the one on Friday, August 6th. But they're doing two shows. One with older master fiddlers, who have been doing part of this tradition for decades. The second one is going to be younger folks, apprentices, who are there learning the craft and giving it new life and new energy. So it'll be this wonderful opportunity to sort of see both the masters and the apprentices at work. Those concerts that will be outside. I think we're going to do Peace Park, and I think also the Jesse Hall East Portico is going to be one of those sites. But we'll have more information about the specifics of those performances later, probably in early July. We've talked about musical performance, but we haven't necessarily talked about dance, which is also sort of animated through music. We're going to have two opportunities, two dance demonstrations on Saturday, August 7th at the Missouri Theater, one right after the other. 1 o'clock, Carmen Dents and Grupo Atlantico will be performing some Latin dance traditions. Carmen is an immigrant from Colombia. And again, sort of these Latin traditions, these South American traditions, they're given kind of a different spin here in this place in Missouri. And then that'll be followed by a demonstration dance by Missouri State Federation of Square and Round Dance Clubs at 2 o'clock. So both of those will follow one right after the other. Again, give kind of a slightly different spin on music and the role of music in Missouri history, life, and culture. Finally, I am very excited. We've already talked about them this at the top, but Missouri Music at 200, this project with Music in the American Wild, will also be performed on Sunday, August 8th as part of the Together for 21 Fest. So this will be at 1 o'clock in Peace Park, which is right here on the campus. Again, a wonderful opportunity to experience that music in a beautiful and wonderful setting. Fingers crossed for the weather. If not, we'll move it indoors to the Center for Missouri Studies, but it will be happening regardless. And I'm grateful to Dan and Evelyn for being a part of that weekend. Those are the major music pieces that'll be part of the Together for 121 Fest. Of course, other kinds of activities will be going on, from lectures to exhibitions and all kinds of things that we hope you'll consider being a part of. We look forward to telling you even more about those as more information becomes available. So thank you, Beth.
All right. Well, thank you, Michael. Now it is time to hear from you, our audience. If you have a question for any of our panelists, please type it in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And we do have a question that just came earlier, but I believe Paul has answered it. So Janet asked was, can you put the website on the screen that Paul is talking about with definitions of different music genre? And that is at the Sheldon website, which is www.thesheldon.org. That is also written in under the chat function there too. So you can catch it there. So good question. Can you kind of go into a little bit more about what it is about music in Missouri that might set us apart from other states?
Yes, I would say that Missouri, probably much like New Orleans, was a focal point, I mean, where different peoples, different cultures came together. And I think back in the early days, it was the rivers that kind of prompted that, as well as the wagon trains and the trails that led west. I mean, all of the Western movement, both to the Pacific and to the Northwest and to the Southwest, started in Missouri. And so Missouri was a transportation hub, if you will, going back to riverboats and then trails and then railroads and the whole mixing of cultures, I think made Missouri a very rich cultural place for things like music to thrive, because all these peoples brought their music with them. And so, and then when they were here, they would hear other music, of course, and create new things out of that. So that rich history, and certainly African Americans played a huge role when you think about ragtime, blues, and jazz, and R&B, and all the great names that you could cite in those genres. I mean, Missouri was a place, though we have struggled with our racial diversity at times, it has been one of the things that does bring us together. And as Patrick said, it's one of our common bonds. I mean, amongst people in cities, suburbs, and rural Missouri share love of many genres of music.
Yes, absolutely. And I know we have our college professors here with us who probably have answered that a time or two, but Emlyn, Dan, and Stefan, if you'd like to jump in and kind of give your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, I'll just say something really quickly. I mean, I really seized on that in my piece for the Sheldon, because this idea of these two rivers coming together, and I grew up in Memphis, which is also on the Mississippi River, and contributed greatly to our musical culture in Memphis, but especially St. Louis, its strategic position as the confluence of the Missouri and the Mississippi rivers has brought so many people. And as Paul very eloquently just said, it's amazing how all these different forms of transportation were pivotal in the development of St. Louis and the state at large. Wagon trains and rivers and the train station, which I was just at a program in Springfield lately where they talked about the bars on Market Street and all of these people coming through Union Station and sharing their music and having great times in the bars and developing what has really become the popular music of the past 100 years.
I would just like to echo what Paul and Stefan said. I'm not sure that I could say anything more eloquent than that, but it's been great for me through this project and connecting with Stefan and other composers in the area and learning about music in the state. Both my parents are from Missouri, their parents are from Missouri. My family goes back for a while in Missouri, and it's been a really great learning experience for me to learn more about the traditions in Missouri since I have moved back here for the last 3 years. So this has been a really special opportunity for me to connect with that and then share some of these traditions with people in this bicentennial event.
Beth, I might jump in and say, I mean, I think what's really exciting about both the projects that we heard about is it really showcases how certainly Missouri's musical past is well worth remembering and talking about, but Missouri continues to be this place of great musical innovation. And that's something that, again, sort of propels us into that future. We're building on those older traditions in, I think, new and exciting ways that make it a place that you should be paying attention to. So,
as far as looking ahead in the future, I know we have a lot of bright young musicians up and coming. There's so many educational programs. I think for educators out there too, what are you seeing on the horizon as far as young people interested in creating music?
I'm going to jump on that quickly because I've thought about this a lot. I've taught at Mizzou for 18 years, and I've really been struck by how many students are participating in different areas. So I come from a conservatory background, so you play the cello or you compose or you play violin. you certainly don't sing in choir and you play in orchestra. But our students at Mizzou, a lot of them sing in choir, play a wind instrument so they can play in band, and play a string instrument so they can play in orchestra. There's just this real musical culture. Some of it comes out of religion, some of it comes out of a background, but they want to participate, or it's part of their life that they've always participated in all these different ensembles and all these different genres too. And it really brings a very well-rounded student to our university. I'm sure other universities around the state, because it's just part of the DNA of Missouri to participate in music in a wide variety of ways. And I love that Mike's bringing dance into it too, because of course that's very well integrated to a lot of our musical traditions here.
And I have to thank the technology, just watching my own kids adapt to music. They're already composing because they're able to bring in different sounds with just basic, not too expensive software, a lot of it free software, to create that new music that they like to listen to and compose. So it just seems like being able to utilize technology in the future is going to just even open that landscape even more. All right, so we are about at the end of our program, and we like to close out with a couple of prize giveaways. This morning we had a drawing among the 82 folks who've registered for today, and the name our computer randomly drew was actually my mother, Betty Pike of Washington, Missouri. So I swear I did not pick her name, Mom. I know you're listening.
Right.
She's been with us each time, so at some point it's going to pick her, I guess. But anyway, you will be winning our Bicentennial swag for today. And finally, we do have a quick question quiz. We're going to give our audience a chance to also win some cool items. I'll ask the question, and the first person who submits the right answer will be our winner. Be sure to type your answer in the Q&A box, not the chat box if you can, but the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So let me go ahead and share this. What is Missouri's state song? And that's probably going to be an easy one. Okay, Stephen Roberts, you are our winner. Absolutely. So as some of you all may know a little bit about the history of the Missouri Waltz, but this is from the Secretary of State's office. It is really difficult to determine the origin of the Missouri Waltz. Historians generally agree that the tune was first printed around 1912 by Frederick Knight Logan of Oskaloosa, Iowa. About 1,000 copies were published in Chicago and distributed to various music dealers and orchestra leaders, and the lyrics did not appear with the tune until later. But most versions of the song's origins agree that Logan picked up the song from orchestra leader John Valentine Epple of Fort Dodge, Iowa. And according to one version, Epple learned the melody from an African-American man in Missouri who had been taught the tune by his mother. And around Moberly, residents say that the original composer was Dab Hanna, an African-American piano player. But others say that Henry Clay Cooper, an African-American dance instructor, gave the melody to Logan. And so as you can see, there are many other claims to its origin besides these. The Missouri Waltz did gain popularity after Harry Truman became president of the United States in 1945. He played the song on the piano at the White House, and in doing so, enhanced its popularity. However, President Truman did not claim it as his favorite song. In fact, he had said this to say about it in a television interview, quote, "If you let me say what I think, I don't think I give a blank about it, but I can't say it out loud because it's the song of Missouri. It's as bad as the Star-Spangled Banner as far as music is concerned."
Give him hell, Harry.
So anyway, we do thank all of our panelists and all of you for joining us on a musical journey in our state. Next month on Missouri 2021 Presents, we will wrap up this Zoom series as we get closer to Statehood Day. We'll fill you in on the major events happening in August and what to expect for the rest of our bicentennial year. Our last episode will be on Tuesday, July 6th at 11 a.m. We will have registration open by the end of this week. And as always, you can sign up at Missouri2021.org, which will direct you to the online registration page for programming at the State Historical Society of Missouri. This series is taped and recordings are uploaded on our website. We do look forward to being with you again July 6th for Missouri 2021 Presents. See you next time.